So then question of the week, I think. So the question of the week came in via the email address. And what's that email address again, Greg, that people can send questions to?
Mailbag at frequentmiler.com.
That's it. So question of the week this week. My wife and I are not so young anymore, and I have just retired from my 50-year career. We've amassed plenty of miles and points, particularly over the last couple of years without traveling. How about doing a post about how to preserve miles and points in case of a death? And more importantly, how to plan for this in advance. I know I would turn in my grave if the banks, hotels, airlines took back all the fruits of years of playing this game. I'm going to skip around here and paraphrase a little bit. And so it said, if one of us dies suddenly, which programs allow transfers to a spouse and at what cost? If both spouses die suddenly, what happens to the miles and points? What should we put in our wills? What about our trust? Should we create a joint account for JetBlue points or Avios or pool things together? What should we do? Which programs can be cashed out if that's the optimal redemption? What advice do you have here, Greg? What do you do when you're trying to plan for the future with all these miles and points that are worth a lot, right?
Yeah, don't do what I do, which is I haven't been very proactive, but I think you wrote a post about this
I did at some point.
A couple of years ago, maybe.
Yeah.
So I would start by going back and reading that.
I think it's planning for a points and miles afterlife or something like that.
That sounds right. So the good news is some programs like Amex Membership Rewards, even though they don't typically allow you to move points from one person to another, they do make an exception upon death, but it's not necessarily an easy process. So the executor has to initiate the transfer, but it theoretically can be done. And in the case of loyalty programs like Delta, United, and so on, if they don't have an option for moving the points after death, I recommend, this isn't what the loyalty programs want me to say, but make it possible so that your whoever inherits your estate can actually just log on to your account and use those miles to book for themselves or for others in the family. There's no reason to let those miles go away.
Right. And, so in my case, we've recently gone through this process of creating a will and planning a little bit for that. And as we were in the process, a friend of mine was doing the same kind of thing. And he actually called me up one day and said, listen, my sister's going to be the executor of my estate, but I'm wondering if you'd be willing to be a co-executor because I've got all these miles and points and she has no idea what to do with them. And so I said, okay, yeah, that's fine. And I asked him to do the same for me because he's familiar enough with all of this stuff that I said, oh, that's actually a really good idea. So my family knows that if and when something happens, I think probably they would call Greg first. But that aside, that Evan will be, or my friend, I should have said, will be an executor of my estate. So that's, I think it's useful to have someone that is familiar. Now I say that, and there's a reader who's written in a few times or written about this topic a few times who has said that, she simplified things because her kids asked her to. She had a lot of different points and different programs, and her kids weren't interested in learning how to do all this stuff, didn't want to have to log into a million different programs. So she kept it very simple with just a few programs, or has anyway in the last however many years. She plans for that. So that's certainly something to consider, which ones are the easiest for moving points around and whatnot. And my wife, of course, knows that if something were to happen to me, that, there are points to transfer and things to do right away before anything else happens. So before she calls the ambulance, she should make sure she transfers my points the way they need to be transferred. So, yeah.
And I've told my wife, call Nick.
We'll take care of it. So
hopefully that won't be what everybody listening decides to tell their spouses.
Probably not. So anyway,
call Nick
think
at
right,
721.
Right. Please don't do that. But I think it's also worth mentioning here, though, that we're talking about these kind of ways around it. But one of the things that's kind of frustrating about miles and points is that you don't really own them, right? I mean, they're not really
Right,
yours.
right.
And so that's one of the things that kind of I think is problematic about the way, like, for instance, referral bonuses, you pay taxes on those. I don't mind paying my fair share, and the points are worth more to me than what I pay in taxes on them. So it doesn't really bother me from that perspective. But from the flip side, they're not even really mine. And if something happens to me, technically, by the letter of the program details, they just evaporate into space. And so it seems that they aren't worth anything potentially. So
Right.
I mean, you really do need to plan for it a little bit, because none of these programs officially have a system where you can transfer the points. A lot of them will make exceptions and be nice in that case. But if you're relying on somebody's nicety, well, I don't like to rely on that as much. And so
Yeah.
having a plan for what you're going to do and who's going to do it makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. And a word wallet. I mean,
Yeah.
so I have all of our programs, all the loyalty programs, all the points programs, except for the bank ones. I don't keep them in word wallet, but you can in a word wallet, so that worst case, my wife can get onto Word Wallet and see what all the balances are, and even on the desktop version, click through, it auto logs you into the program, and so she could log in and try to figure out what to do from there. So I don't know. I mean, personally, I don't know what I'd do without a Word Wallet in general, because I have so many points in so many different programs. But I have to imagine that would be a huge, huge benefit to someone who's taking over an estate of points and miles and trying to figure out what to do with it.
Good point. Good point. All right.